Thanks for that letter, by the way. And then I invited you. They was telling me, well,
You don't
they
mind-
were saying they never got a letter. And I'm like, well, here's the letter. So sorry to bother you because they were telling me there's no letter. And then I talked to him the other day briefly, he goes, yeah, well, they were saying that you could. Whatever.
Okay, we can start, Steve.
We could start, all right.
Start.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the Wednesday, May 7th, 2025 meeting of the Capital Region Transportation Council. We'll start with introduction, Steve Keating, Schenectady County.
Chris Wallen, City of Schenectady.
Greg Richard, Regional DOT.
Mike Butler, City Mechanicville.
Kim Lambert, Saratoga County.
Mike Bodett, Thruway Authority.
Lisa Ramondo, Albany County.
Andrew Kreshik, City of Troy. John Schneider, Port of Albany. Tom Houlihan, City of Rensselaer.
Sandy Misowitz with the Transportation Council.
Melissa Shanley, CDTA.
Jim DeJoy, Public.
Ethan Townsend, Transportation Council.
Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council.
Adam McCarville, Transportation Council.
Joe Peregrine, Town Colony. Tom Romano, Town County.
Bob Rice, FCM Engineer.
Randy Milano, Region 1, DOT.
Jessica Noble, Bell Associates.
Angelo Stefano, FCM Engineer.
So virtually, we've got Leah Rye from the Transportation Council, Alex Cohn from Cambridge Systematics, Ed Snyder from GPI, Emily Laughlin from CDTA, Jamie O'Neill from the Town of Malta, Joe Semino from CHA, John Scavo, Town of Clifton Park, Laura Robertson, Town of Niskayuna, Mark Castiglione, CDRPC, Mike Williams, CDTA, Mike Dutery, Saratoga Springs, Parker Morris, the Transportation Council. I believe it's Rosa Torino. If you could put your affiliation in the chat, that would be great. Apologize. Sharon Butler from the City of Cohoes, Tim Lane from the Village of Manaus. If I missed anybody, just drop your name and affiliation in the chat.
All good?
We are good.
Is there issues? We have nobody signed up to speak, correct?
Do not have anyone registered to speak. All right, Rosa Torino from Albany County.
Thank you. Administration, previous minutes, April 2nd. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved by Kim.
I have a second.
John?
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
When opposed, abstain. Motion carries. Thank you. Minutes pass. Action items. A lot of stuff here, it looks like.
You tip amendments.
Tip, amendment 1. Northway Bridges, I guess, you wanna look this way?
Yep. So, this is this one, this is another tip amendment to, at last planning committee, we added this project out of our bridge preservation set aside. Since then, we bid another project of the very similar scope that the bids came in high, so we're here adjusting this new project that was spun out of the multi-county bridge preservation set aside. We're increasing the construction from about 2.5 million to an anticipated 3.7, hoping that this covers the low bids this time. And like I said, it's a drawdown from the regional multi-county set aside, going further down from 37.8 to 36.6. The next page shows the site-specific bridge preservation project and the respective budget increase this reflects. So it's a net zero to the regional fiscal constraint. So
This is to do what, Greg?
it's to do bridge preservation work on the two Northway bridges, which are, I believe, down in the vicinity of the throughway interchange. There's several bridges in that corridor, but it's like the two that I believe are over tributary that, the reservoir that runs under there, so.
Okay. Any questions, for Greg? No impact on anything else then? It's just
Nope.
out of the set aside, draw down.
Yeah.
All right, now hearing no questions, can I get a motion to approve, Greg's tip amendment here for Northway Bridges?
I'll make a motion.
Butler
Second. Second,
and Andrew.
further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, anyone opposed, abstain? Thank you. Motion carries. Now we have 2 through 8. This is CDTA. If you wanna, who's gonna explain this?
Melissa, you wanna take a explain?
Sure.
Sure.
So, each year CDTA is, receives 5307 and 5339 funds for the designated recipient of those funds from FTA. And after the approval of our capital plan, by the board in the end of March, we then program the funds according to how the board approved the plan for the year, to use for each year. So we need to update the tip to align with the plans for that year. So this year, our formula funds for preventive maintenance, which is reoccurring every year, buses, operators, safety barriers on our buses, some new lifts, vehicle maintenance software, and some video pairs. We've been piloting that, and that'll be putting those on some of the buses. So this is just the program, our, annual funds. The actual apportionments, were just released on Monday, and, they're slightly higher than last year, but, there's more than sufficient to cover the program funds for us.
Okay, any questions for Melissa?
Yeah, just, so preventive maintenance Saratoga, that's a building?
No, so it covers, facilities and vehicle maintenance. There's 5307 funds that are apportioned to the Saratoga urbanized area and the Albany urbanized area, so that's just split out because it's a separate, apportionment.
A bus barrier or something internal?
Yes, so that's inside the bus that kind of protects the operators from, people riding the bus, from, there's been a rise in assaults, and it's a safety issue.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Melissa? Basically, we're just programming the funds that are already,
Yep, so these are kind of dedicated funds, we'll call them, and this aligns the tip with their capital program.
alright. Can I get a motion to approve CDTA's request?
Lisa, and
Have
then
a second?
Andrew.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call in favor, aye? Anyone opposed? Staying? Carries, thank you. Amendment 9, Riverview Road.
Yes, for those listening virtually, we did have a revised agenda today. The amendment we're about to review is that revision, just so you know.
Okay. I-87 again, right?
Yes.
It is, so we, get to the story of the background of this in a bit, but we wanted to bring forward a, unfortunately, late tip amendment to merge Riverview Road with the Nelson Avenue Bridge Replacement Project. That way, both projects were progressing independently through design. They're both on track to be ready for construction at the same time, so in the interest of efficiency, we're proposing to merge the pins while also updating the anticipated costs. So as much as we are showing some cost increases, we're hoping there's some savings at the end of the day by putting them together rather than letting them separate. So these are both headed for construction this fall. And this will, like I said, this will replace Riverview and Nelson Avenue now together. We did this a number of years ago with East High and Crescent Street bridges over the 87, and you do realize efficiency because it's the same contractor, the way the work stages, they can bounce back and forth and stay busy rather than going elsewhere. So we're hoping to realize some savings, but here's the proposed table showing basically the Nelson Avenue pin absorbing the Riverview funding, and the process of doing this, we're also switching some of the funds from NHVP to this bridge formula main, which is very interchangeable money. It's just a color of money thing. So this is the action here before us to.
So you're anticipating cost savings, but anticipating the cost going up.
Sauce is going up.
We
Yeah.
anticipated costs going up, but we anticipated they'd go up even more if they were
If
elected
it was.
individually,
Okay,
is the idea.
And it's beneficial to not use NHPP to use to be
Yes, so the bridge formula program, I'll say, is a new fund source in the highway bill a few years ago. But statewide, we haven't been spending it very fast, so we're swapping some money to spend the bridge formula faster. Just to balance the financial books, really.
but it's not gonna affect any. Because bridge formula program could be used by locals, correct?
Only on the system bridges, so. So there's bridge formula off system and bridge formula main. The bridge formula off system is what can be used by locals the most. Most local bridges are off the system. Main can only be used on the system.
And NHPP can be used on the system,
Yep.
so then it would be interchangeable then, okay.
Yep.
additional questions?
Any idea how many on-system bridges exist that are? No, that are local.
I'd measure it in the dozens
Statewide.
of, in the region one. I mean, in region one, there's, I forget how many. Local down bridges, but it's hundreds, and only a few dozen of those are on the federal system. You know, so many are off. Versus the state is the exact opposite.
Right.
Almost our entire network is on the system with very few off, so.
Okay,
So you don't anticipate any major impact to funding for those.
No, and this is trying to obligate money this federal fiscal year, quickly, so.
Thanks.
okay, any additional questions for Greg? So we're looking to merge SA 340 with SA 339, is that the?
That is
the-
correct, and
the
this will
request?
require policy board
Because
action.
it's a cost increase of 3.83 million, that's based on your and new engineer's estimate, is that?
And the scope change, merging them becomes a scope change and. This step ballot will have to navigate through federal highway approval. Not all step ballots need federal highway approval, and I'll touch on that topic here in a little bit. And that updates.
Okay, can I get a motion to merge those projects? I need a second.
Scott and Lisa.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anyone opposed, abstain? Thank you, motion carries, amendment 9 carries, now we're on to. Draft resolution for CDTA.
Yep.
authorities.
So one of our little administrative federal requirements is supporting targets to some federally required performance measures. One of those measures is for transit asset management. So back in, I believe, February, CDTA's board approved their new transit asset management plan and developed new targets for I'll call it fleet replacement. So I know this is a very tiny table, and for those in the room, it might be kind of hard to see this, but the requirement is that there needs to be an inventory of all of the vehicles, which I refer to as rolling stock. Major equipment that CDTA owns, you might see some light duty vehicles on the roadway, trucks, etc. Things like forklifts. And then facilities, so actually there's a measurement of condition of their facilities, and the transit authority is required to establish targets to maintain these in basically a state of good repair. So this information is useful to us as we sort of monitor with CDTA's assistance how they're progressing in meeting these targets. So a lot of the projects that Melissa reviewed, purchase of buses, what have you, these are the kinds of things that obviously would keep the system in a state of good repair.
The target mean 0%.
So it essentially is saying that they have a goal of replacing up to 10%.
So it's a replacement target,
Right, to make sure that they stay within that, what's called the useful life benchmarks. That's how many years the vehicle is expected.
So
to
within
live.
14 years, this is the percentage we're gonna replace.
Yep. That's the target.
60% of buses. 40, that's what that means. in 14
Roughly,
years.
yes.
This requirement of FDA.
This is one of these Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration requirements, in law.
And the resolution is what?
To have our MPOs support CDTA's targets. And we will include these in both the tip and, that's why we're doing this action before the tip adoption. Because these targets are actually included in the, tip document. And they'll also be used in our long range plan.
Okay. Any questions? So I need a motion to approve the resolution to support the targets CDTA has established. Can I get a motion to that?
John?
I get a second. Oh, you guys
John, at least-
leading the league today. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anyone opposed, abstain? Motion carries, thank you, to the tip approval.
Yes, so I'm going to have Andrew review what we haven't already shared with you as we are finalizing our tip documents. So take it away, Andrew.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So the tip document was released for public review following the March policy board meeting. We had a 45-day public comment period that ended on April 21st. Since then, we were busy summarizing all the public input we've received and updating the document itself. Moving forward, so today we're asking that it be recommended to the June policy board for final approval so that it can go live at the beginning of fiscal year 2026, October 1st of this year. So a quick summary of the public comments we received. First, we held a virtual tip public meeting. Thank you very much for everyone who attended. I answered a lot of questions at that meeting, and we held an in-person tip open house event right here in the office and had a handful of people attend. We also received 11 comments, either through email or through the survey that was up on our website. So all of the written comments we received are included in the tip document in one of the appendices. You can take a look and read our responses to those comments as well. Survey takers and everyone who left comments were generally very supportive. They mostly expressed support for individual projects that were listed in the tip document, and there were a few that asked for clarifications or corrections that were all minor. The next slide. Sorry about this. This is the new fiscal constraint chart. We were given this, all of the MPOs in New York State were given the same format of fiscal constraint chart to use so that we can all be consistent moving forward. Please take a look at the tip document if you'd like to zoom in a little further. But this is the new format of fiscal constraint chart. This is still a work in progress. Things will continue to be adjusted moving forward. This includes a mix of fund sources for which we have planning targets, which if you look at the kind of the first column, it says anticipated federal funds. So those are the fund sources for which we have a planning target. The ones that say N/A are discretionary grant funds like the TAP and CMAQ, but they wanted us to include all of them in the same fiscal constraint charts. So I'll also mention that we have a number of FY25 projects that we don't know how many of them are going to be obligated by the end of this fiscal year. If they're obligated, then they won't use any funding on the new tip. If they aren't obligated, they'll need to roll into FY26, so those numbers will go up. So you'll notice that some years are a little higher than the planning target. FY27 is high. We're going to have to continue to adjust this moving forward, both bringing in unobligated FY25 projects and putting them in future years, or moving things between the future years to adjust. So we added this to the tip document. We added the public involvement summary. All the other changes to the tip document were pretty minor in nature, a few tweaks to the performance management section. If you go to, my last slide here, like I mentioned, fund sources or funding years for certain projects. We're gonna continue to work with DOT to try to balance the program and maintain fiscal constraints. What we've been told is that if your project is being parked in one of the later years of the tip, but you can prepare a PSNE package right now, come talk to us and come speak to DOT. We want to get these projects moving as soon as early as possible, as long as they're shovel ready. So please come talk to us about early authorization. This especially applies if you have, we took a bunch of HSIP projects and parked them in 2030, so we're over programmed in HSIP. But if those projects are ready to go, or projects being funded with another fund source, let us know and we can move them into FY 26, for example. So that's all from us. The updated tip document and appendices are up on the website, and some minor tweaks may continue to be made for the policy board meeting. So any questions, anything at all?
So this was different from our assumptions when we put the tip together, is that from the year to year?
I would refer to it as just an expansion of how we're representing all of the federal funds in that table than what we've traditionally done here, but it didn't change the math per se.
And we suggested a bunch of moves out of federal 26 because this is gonna get locked down and become the tip amendment measuring stick of
How we're doing.
performance, yeah.
Yeah.
And so to have less projects in 26 shown now. We basically kept things that we think are sure things. That'll happen. So we moved a whole bunch of stuff out of 26. So if you see your project not in 26 where you thought it was, don't worry. If you're ready, bring it back in, no harm, no foul. But we wanted to be conservative on this point to move stuff out so we don't get dinged on the performance. So.
The main thing I would encourage all of the sponsors to do, and I'm showing on screen just one of the project listings, please review the data. We want to make sure that fund sources, the actual dollars, the project scope descriptions, the sponsors, we want to just make sure all the data is correct or as close to correct as we can. Because there's actually a lot of manual data entry that goes on behind the scenes here. So, it is always subject to error. So definitely take some time to look at your listing, and if you have any questions, let us know.
Action being,
So the action today, we have two resolutions. The first is to approve the tip and recommend policy board approval of the final document. And we can take the two resolutions separately.
separately?
Yep.
Okay. All right, can I get a motion to approve the tip that we? All right.
You go.
I get a second, okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anyone opposed, abstained? Okay, motion carries, so that goes on to the policy board.
Correct. The second resolution, as part of this work, we have to, we're required to self-certify that our planning process meets federal requirements, and that's easy to do because we literally back 6 months ago, were certified by the Federal Highway Administration for a consistent planning process. So this is a separate action we need to self-certify our planning
So
process.
we recommend this to the policy
That will
board,
also go to policy board, yep.
say we're doing everything correct, right?
We are doing everything as best we can.
Oh, all right, can we get a motion to move this on to the policy board, the self-certification?
John?
Second,
I'll second.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstain? Motion carries. Okay, down to air quality conformity, is that?
Yes, this is another fun federal requirement, and oh, there it is. So this document is required under the Clean Air Act, believe it or not. Even though our region by definition is in attainment for ozone. There was a court case years ago in California which said. You still have to track how you're doing under the Clean Air Act. And so I'll be honest, this is a highly administrative document. That basically states that most of what we're doing in our region, which obviously we're the 4 counties, but the urbanized area or sort of the MSA that this ozone requirement handles also encompasses Montgomery, Schoharie, and Greene counties. So in this document, we have gathered all of the new tip projects for these geographies. Including a little piece of the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council because that sits in Saratoga County. The basic message here is we're in compliance with the Clean Air Act. So this resolution 25-7 basically is going to open a public review process. I said resolution, this action today will open a public review process on this document, which is required in law. And we would fully expect to be able to adopt this report as part of our policy board action in June.
So the action here is just release for public review.
Release this for public review.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
On page, it's attachment 6, which starts on page 12. You had said that it lists all of our new tips. It says page 2 of 3, and there's only page 2 and page 3, so I think it's missing page 1. And I know some of the Saratoga County, like our other pavement preservation.
Oh, yeah, I see what yeah, that was an oopsie. Sorry about that. Thanks for
Okay.
catching that. Yes, so we'll repost the full table after the meeting. We do have all the projects.
Let me make sure.
You're listing
Pavement preservation.
projects we're listing.
Say it again?
Is it all the tip projects?
That's just the new ones.
Yes.
Why do we say Albany, Schenectady, Troy?
That is the census defined urban
Yes.
area for the purposes of this.
Even though it's that area that's surrounds it?
Yeah, it's sort of the nickname for it,
Okay.
just census defined.
Thanks for that edit. Any further questions? So we need a motion to release this document for public review with the amendment that was
With the corrected.
corrected
table.
list. Can I get a motion to that?
I'll make a move.
I got Chris and
Alright, I got Chris and
and the second is.
I'll do so.
Mike, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstained? So that's released for public review. Moving on to. This 8-hour ozone non-attainment, is it the same thing?
No, that was the action we
That was-
just did.
yeah.
We're all
So
set.
we're all good.
We're set with the action item. Sorry that, I know that's some of the drier material we have here, but I appreciate everybody's work and I just wanted to thank. Our staff and the NISDOT staff for the many tireless hours that were spent putting the tip document together. It's definitely a lot of hard work. So the next presentation, or really the first presentation today, will be giving you folks a briefing on where we're at with the in-motion plan. I know some of you participate on the task force, but it's been a few months since we were able to spend some time here to talk about where we're at with the plan. I'd like to say we were further along than we are. We should be further along than we are, which is going to lead to some schedule adjustments, but I'm gonna walk through where we're at and where we're going. And so right now, our consultant team is putting together our draft report. What I'm sharing today is preliminary. The document will include an executive summary of about 10 pages or so. And then we'll have a full report of about roughly 100 pages, excluding the appendices. The, excuse me, the first section is on the introductory material, which basically talks about who we are, what the long-range plan is, or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the federal planning factors that are in law that we build this plan around. We talk about the development process, the use of the task force. And then we also will have in this section some discussion about our region and our transportation system, some sort of facts and figures about that. Chapter 2 will cover sort of the purpose of the plan and what we're trying to do with it. As part of that, we developed a draft vision statement and some draft goals. And since you folks last saw this, numerous executive orders have come out from the federal level that have kind of required us to adjust some of the language we're using. So since you saw this last, we've kind of tried to respond as best we can to the expectations of the new federal administration. But the spirit of what we're trying to do really has not changed. And I think the spirit in this vision statement is when we're looking out to 2050, we want to make sure we have a transportation system that's safe, that's resilient, and is reliable for the movement of all people and goods. And that's the simplest way to put it. We're going to try to have community focused approaches that are multimodal. They want to make sure that we connect people to jobs and economic opportunity. We want to make sure that the growth that occurs in our region is sustainable and that we still build livable quality communities. And then, to further that vision, we want to make sure that how we invest in the transportation system will continue to improve the performance of our transportation system, that it is supportive of new development, new economic opportunities, that we adapt to the technologies, the new technologies that come out, and that we do protect the environment for future generations, because we do have a responsibility to protect, have clean air and clean water. So that's sort of been the draft vision statement. We've also had to massage our goals, but we've derived from that process 5 primary goals for the plan. Safety, not surprisingly, number 1. So mobility, making sure that folks are able to move around the region, that they have access to a range of transportation options, that we build these livable communities, and that our system is as resilient as we can be. And I'll walk through these at a very high level today. Our safety goal has been adjusted to align with the proposed goal that is being developed in our Capital Region Vision Zero Safety Action Plan, which states that our goal is to eliminate fatalities and reduce serious injuries by 50% on Capital Region roadways. As part of this goal, we're also trying to increase the overall security of the transportation system, and there's a variety of objectives listed in the plan that focuses on the most vulnerable roadway users, education, and just minimizing the impact of system failures. For the mobility goal, we want to ensure that the system is maintained, operated, and coordinated to support reliable travel throughout the region. So this really gets to operations and making sure the system is as efficient as we can make it. So it deals with options to address travel time reliability, to make sure we're using technologies to the maximum extent possible to make the system as efficient as we can, make sure the system is maintained in a state of good repair, and improving the resiliency of our supply chains and making sure that goods can move through the region. The goal of access has to do with improving the choices for transportation and making sure we have good access to key destinations for people and goods. So again, this is really the multimodal goal, making sure that we're investing in a range of transportation options, of all shapes and sizes, and that we work to make sure that we increase these project delivery times and actually see tangible results on the ground. The goal of livability is we strive to make investments in the system to support economic development, population growth, and housing in areas with transportation options. Housing is going to be a topic you're going to hear more about over this next year or two. As you know, as I'm sure you're all aware, there's housing challenges in our region. Not unique to our region, but certainly we're experiencing them here. We also are looking to align our work with the goals of our Capital Region Economic Development Council as they strive to grow the region to 1 million people. And how does that fit in and what does that do to the transportation system? And we want to make sure that we encourage, as to the extent possible, compact development, maximize where we have transit lines, mixed use development. Again, the more we can provide a range of options, the better for the transportation system. And that includes in how we design our communities. And then the goal of resilience is preparing for and protecting infrastructure from changing conditions and natural hazards. And we strive to responsibly adapt infrastructure for the use of future generations. This gets to our changing weather patterns, so how we address flooding, extreme heat, snow and ice removal, these sorts of things, stormwater management. Also talks about emergency response and disaster planning, integrating our work with hazard mitigation plans. And making sure that we're using and still encouraging sustainable transportation energy practices in the transportation sector. As we still have a climate law here in New York, we can't ignore the fact that there are some goals within the climate law. We want to make sure that we're supporting as much of a range of options for fuel types, et cetera, as we can to ensure a more resilient system. The next chapter will focus on current trends. So a lot of the products that we developed last year, the regional trends report and the story map in partnership with CDRPC is where a lot of this content will come from. Think of this as our existing conditions summary. And we're sticking to the 10 or so bullets that we developed last year in terms of the key regional trends. These are just facts that the data is showing us, but we still are experiencing growth, but at a slow rate. I think CDRPC had in a recent e-newsletter that we're the third fastest growing region in upstate New York. But we grew, I think it was 0.5% since 2020. It's a modest amount of growth. Very, very modest. But we're not losing people and we're not flat. So we're doing better than other parts of the state. But again, these trends of the concern about housing affordability, the aging population, we're still dealing with crashes. There's still economic inequality and inequality of opportunity to access jobs. We have the aging infrastructure that says we still may need to tweak some of this language, but certainly aging infrastructure is increasingly vulnerable to weather events. Our sprawling development patterns are challenging in some respects. We're seeing increased number of transportation options and advanced technologies being implemented in the region. And we're still seeing the legacy of the significant shift to working from home, particularly for the state workforce, which when you see articles like we saw this week on commuter rail, that's nice. But if we don't have a place that people are going on a regular basis, it makes it hard to even consider investments like that. And then obviously the warmer and wetter climate. Chapter 4 is where we get into assessing the future, and we did a range of activities with the In Motion Task Force to kind of do some scenario planning, think about what disruptive forces there are. Looking out to 2050, we did a little modeling, and we completed a needs assessment of our assets. I'm gonna just give you kind of the hopefully high level version of what was done this last few months. Back in November, we held a task force workshop on scenario planning. We identified a few disruptive forces, and the group decided to focus on the interrelationships of technology and land development. And from that work, 5 scenarios were discussed. We looked at connected centers, main street districts, wired out lands, scattered suburbs, and sort of what I'll call the regional momentum or the continuing current trends. And with each of these, within each of these, we said one might be high tech versus high intensity, maybe one is low tech and high intensity development. And we looked at a range of options. And the goal here was not to identify a preferred future. We weren't looking to say we want to be that. What we were looking to think about is what are the benefits of each scenario for the region, what might be the costs, and what might be some trade-offs that we have to make in these scenarios when we're thinking about how we're investing in the future. And so as a demonstration of this, as I said, we looked at the interrelationships of development and technology and had some lengthy discussions about the impacts of these. And there were some key takeaways from that work. From a qualitative point of view, amongst them, and interestingly, they align very closely with our goals and our vision statement. But the group thought, that infrastructure flexibility was going to be important. We needed to be able to adapt. So we don't want to invest in things that are going to commit us to any one thing for an extended period of time because we don't have that crystal ball. And multimodal options was certainly important. That also feeds into that flexibility. We wanted to pursue more regional coordination. We have a bit of a fragmented governmental system, but how can we better regionally coordinate on some of these issues? Resilience certainly came up, and providing access to transportation for all users of the system. Better integrating technologies, that integration of transportation and land use and economic viability. So interestingly, these aligned very closely to the goals that we developed for the plan. And then we try to do some quantitative modeling, and I won't get into the weeds of this, but what we tried to do using our regional travel demand model, which you may also hear us refer to as the STEP model, we looked at several land use scenarios. We looked at the baseline growth estimates that CDRPC develops, which is the baseline forecast of our population growth. Out to 2050 is estimated to grow to about 895,000 people. Going back to that Capital Region Economic Development Council goal of what if we grew the region to 1 million? So we took that idea and played out some additional scenarios. The first is business as usual. What if we added that 1 million people and we scattered them around the region in the areas that are currently developing, using the same levels of density, the same build out approaches? Then we looked at a different scenario where we said, well, what if we took that 1 million people and scattered them in our compact sections of the region that are not as auto dependent as some other parts of the region? And then we did a fourth scenario where we took that 1 million people and said, what if the region continued to sprawl out and all those new individuals would be outside of the core area? So the map you're seeing in this slide represents the areas of the region that we dropped the sprawling population growth scenario. So from that, we also looked at 3 transportation system scenarios. So related to those 4 scenarios, we said, well, what if there were no changes to the transportation network? What if what we have today is basically what we have out there tomorrow? Then we looked at another scenario where we said, well, what if we made a heavy investment in operations? We really tried to use technology and other tools to improve the capacity of the system solely through technology. And then we looked at another scenario where we took our congestion management plan, looked at the most congested locations in the region and said, okay, what if we added new road capacity, not only in terms of technology, but spot improvements, like maybe a spot widening here or there. And from that work, we were able to run the model, look at a few metrics like vehicle miles of travel, vehicle hours of travel, which basically translates to minutes per person. This was over a typical PM peak hour timeframe, and we were looking out to 2050. We looked at driving speeds. We had some indicators about pollutants, and we looked at vehicle operating costs to some degree. And to super summarize it, the key findings was if the region did in fact grow to 1 million people, what we found is if we were to sprawl it out, driving distances and time spent driving are longer in that sprawling scenario than the other three. If we would end up with higher speeds, which would imply a less congested system and better emissions in the compact scenarios. And then in the business as usual scenario, as with all those scenarios, adding the 1 million people would certainly slow moving traffic down. But I think that if I were to bullet out what this means to you, is that the connection between land use and transportation matters. And this was a mathematical way to try to illustrate that. And we're going to try in the report to translate what is a technical exercise into layman's terms, which is going to be our challenge. So when we share this with elected officials and others, it's very clear what we're trying to say with that work. The other technical piece to this broad assessment of all of the assets in the region. I'm just highlighting a couple of things today in the interest of time. But we partnered with NISDOT, who ran their pavement and bridge models for us to try to project out based on investment scenarios, what would be the resulting condition of pavements and bridges if we maintain existing funding. So in the context of pavement condition, if we maintained funding at the levels it is today, we would expect 12% of the pavements to remain in poor condition. If we increased funding by 15%, that percent poor would drop to 8.8%. Interestingly, if we decreased funding by 15%, it would remain at 12% poor. And we think the reason is we're never really touching and getting to the worst of the worst in the modeled scenarios. And a similar pattern was found with the bridges, using those same figures. And so that was an interesting finding, that decreasing funding didn't lead to a equivalent decrease in the condition of the system. But certainly increasing funding will help us to make progress on the condition of the roads and bridges. And we also looked at culverts, because culverts are of increasing concern and interest to the region. And by county, we came up with replacement cost estimates for culverts based on different condition scenarios. And interestingly, Albany County had the highest number of overall culverts in terms of dollar value that would need to be replaced by 2050, with Rensselaer County actually having the least dollar value in terms of culverts. So, it shows that there's a lot of investment that still needs to be made in culverts. And we looked at, within the needs assessment, we also looked at the transit system. So partnering with CDTA. I'm sorry, this is getting cut off at the bottom because I don't know how to hide that bar. But we looked at the fleet and came up with replacement costs over time for a vehicle replacement, as well as what if CDTA went to some sort of a zero emission vehicle. And we wanted to show folks over time what the replacement costs would be. And not surprising, the like-for-like replacement cost is maybe about half of what the replacement cost would be by shifting the fleet over to some sort of a zero emission vehicle. This is based on our best estimate of likely it being some kind of an electric vehicle, but there are other fuel types out there that could be explored at some time. But this also was assessed as part of the needs. And within that section of the report, we also looked at some additional assets, traffic signals. There's an extensive active transportation network section. We also looked at the tip, the current tip being the 22-27 tip, as well as the new tip, to show where our dollars are being invested and some of the progress that's being made. Chapter 5 is gonna be talking about how we get there, and this is sort of the strategy section of the plan. So we broke this down into different categories of types of strategies, and strategies may be planning exercises, they may be just statements of investment opportunity, they may be supportive language related to other related planning documents. But in the case of maintaining transportation infrastructure, we talk about maintaining infrastructure in a good state of good repair, replacing the bridges and culverts, because we do realize that the bridges and culverts are gonna be a major source of investment. Certainly through 2050, but even in the near term, probably the next 10 years, as the department shifts to replacing bridges and moving away from the sort of maintenance type program. We want to implement the Capital Region Vision Zero Safety Action Plan, support ADA transition plans, and do more with data collection and asset management. Then we want to create a complete transportation network. So this really speaks to the multimodal investment in developing some kind of a regional complete streets network, where we visualize on a map sort of where these connections would be made. Right now, a lot of our complete streets projects are being done in isolation, so they're not internally connected. So the goal here would be to kind of envision what would a regional network look like, much like our interstate highway system, where we have an interconnected network of roadways for motor vehicles. We're looking for something similar for active transportation users. And that would help us with prioritizing investments to that. CDTA is still developing their transit development plan, so unfortunately, we don't have a lot of detail right now in our long-range plan. But I'm certain once that comes to light, hopefully in this next year, maybe even before we adopt the plan, we can add some more detail of which CDTA might be considering as part of their transit development plan. Planning for infrastructure resilience. So this is really the investment in our emission reductions program, as well as hardening our infrastructure. So we are going to be pursuing a capital region resilience plan. The state is currently working on a statewide resilience plan, so we're waiting for that one to kind of be further along before we jump into ours, so we're not duplicating effort. But we also want to be promoting through this the stormwater management practices and kind of get more engaged with our first responders as we plan for emergencies in the region. We also want to implement New York State's carbon reduction strategy, which was developed. Improving system reliability. This is the section that really gets into how we are addressing congestion and managing our transportation system operationally. So, further investment in what we call the TSMO, the Transportation System Management Operation Strategies. We're going to try to work with CDTA and others on developing a next generation transportation demand management program. We need to think about things like automated vehicles, even drones, continue to implement innovative designs in our region beyond roundabouts. There's other types of intersection improvements that we could consider. Updating the regional ITS architecture, I should say. And where necessary, there may be some spot widenings or connector roads developed to further spread the options out for travelers. Integrating transportation and land use is just as it sounds. So, we want to look at further assessing the impacts of parking on our region and sort of the dead space that parking creates. We want to focus on implementing walkable communities and compact development, certainly studying our housing needs, implementing curb management and sort of developing some curb management and access management strategies for the region. We want to make sure that communities are talking to each other. So how do we further that intermunicipal community planning? So we're not just stopping at the border of your town or village or city. We're thinking about, what happens beyond. And making sure that we're taking steps to, have more compact development policies. And I think this is the final one, supporting economic vitality. So, believe it or not, our freight plan has largely been implemented. So we're gonna be looking to perhaps explore an update of that and see what other needs we have in the region for freight. We want to further assess our access to job centers. We did some reporting on some of the mismatch between some certain types of jobs and where people live. So we want to further assess that. We want to monitor the affordability of transportation options, support passenger rail planning, plan for that first and last mile transportation, and think more about the impact that special events and tourism have on our region, which we don't talk a lot about here. But as we're increasingly seeing major events, Belmont, some of these other big Saratoga Springs, SPAC events, maybe there's a soccer stadium coming to our region in the future. But whatever these things are, we want to be able to say what are the impacts of these investments, and do we have a transportation system that can support them?
There's also, I don't know, question down good or?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I had a couple. One was the, ride share, like, where would that fall? Would this fall in kind of the economic vitality area, or is it mainly more the technology?
Yeah, so like there's certain topics like that could fit under any of these umbrellas. I think for the purposes of this, we were probably putting that in the mobility, the access category, because it's a type of transportation option for people. But there are overlaps for a lot of these categories.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was looking for ride share, I didn't see it, but I figured it was like technology or something.
Yeah, it's
And then-
definitely there.
I know, I don't know, in 2026, next year, we're gonna be hosting the World Cup. And there's been a lot of talk because New York City and like the tri-city, like Boston and Philadelphia will be hosting a lot of the matches. And they have had some strategic planning webinars, and I've been attending them just from like a, economic potential perspective, and just wondering if that's something that your group has been looking at, considering what you just said, basically,
Yeah.
towards it all.
So I believe at our statewide conference next week, one of the sessions is going to talk about the planning
Okay.
for World Cup, as well as there were actually two sporting related sessions at our conference. One related to the World Cup, and one is was an effort to and I'm sorry, I'm not a Mets fan. What's Shea Stadium called now?
City
Citi Field. There was some transportation study that was done for Citi Field that they're going to talk about. So to your point, that's our opportunity to kind of get plugged into
What
what's
the
going
other
on in the New York City area. Yeah.
Is they're supposedly doing these like FIFA viewing parties that they're renting out stadiums throughout different regions and the different states that are hosting it. And there could be a potential of having some type of opportunity for the capital region.
Oh, okay. It's good to know. Thank you.
There was one more, but-
That's okay.
Oh, on-ramp.
On-ramp.
The state's on-ramp, project, I know they selected the capital region as being one of them. I was just wondering
Oh,
from the
okay.
job centers if there's been any collaboration with CEG.
No, but that thank you for reminding me of that, because we do want to acknowledge that as a part of this. Thank you. So then these are the works in progress. We had hoped at this point to have the financial piece and the financial planning piece ready for you folks today. Unfortunately, we do not have it, but I will give you just a quick overview of what the document will include. So what our team tried to do, and I'm only focusing for the purposes of this slide on the federal highway side of the equation. But our team tried to project out to 2050 what our estimated revenues would be based on the federal fund sources we have access to today. So that is what this table is trying to show. We've done this for the other asset classes to the extent we could. And then what we'll use that information for, and I'm sorry, this slide is very small. In addition to sort of the regular tip related projects. We do have a set of what we're calling illustrative projects, which will be part of the plan. And these are minimally for the highway side, and bridge side and the transit system side, minimally, $25 million projects or higher. For the active transportation side, we included anything that might be $10 million or higher. And the idea here is we're calling them illustrative because we know these are very big investments that we will likely need resources that go beyond our regional estimated revenues. So you're thinking about something on the scale of 787 at 3 to 6 billion. We know we won't be able to fund that here with our own local resources, even within the state. And all of these larger efforts are listed here that we are aware of today. Some new additions, the information we received from CDTA on what they're calling their west facility, which is the Schenectady garage, as well as the Albany Intermodal Center, both of which are, Albany Intermodal, I would put in the conceptual planning stage, maybe. And the west facility, I believe, is they're just starting to design, as after and stuff. But again, we're looking at some ranges here that are on the higher end of what's expected. Even our regional trails plan implementation, we're including all of the trails that are in that plan by reference, which we estimate to be a $154 million investment, and we're specifically including the Zim Smith Trail because Saratoga County is at a place where they're really actively implementing that plan, that trails network. So we have that cost. A lot of these other projects are bridges. We have some Amtrak work in here. And then the different planning and environmental linkage studies, the one in Schenectady and the 378 bridge are included here. So these are our best estimates, short term, certainly in the next 5 to 10 years that we anticipate perhaps needing to find some resources for.
Sandy,
Yes,
2 slides back, are you anticipating a huge increase in 41?
in 41.
It's 9 years
Oh.
instead of 5, so it's 9.
Yes,
Or 10 years, sorry.
it's it's a
And
longer
then,
timeframe.
and then do we get, going to the next slide, then I'm sorry, thank you.
Yep.
And then in the next slide, I mean, these are all our illustrative projects, right? Do we get a say around the table? You could do the bottom 9 projects for 1/5 the cost of the top 1 project.
Mhm.
So if it came up with, what do you want to just say, hey, listen, we'd rather do this entirety of this list than touch, like, is that just a decision that happens at the federal level above everybody, it's everything for itself?
For the
It's
purpose.
just such a big fish.
Yeah, no,
It's
for
such a
the,
big project.
you're right, though, for the purposes of this plan, it is the policy board's ultimate decision, how we portray things. If the policy board opts to make a statement like that, we can certainly include it. From the federal perspective, they just want to see in our plan anything that would have a significant federal investment, more than likely, this is the list of projects that would.
Sure.
Now you're looking at cost as opposed to critical nature of the infrastructure. So, I mean, yeah, you can pay for things, but the bridge goes down. You're putting a situation in that it's not tenable.
Yeah.
So the cost of like the 378 bridge, has to be done, or an option has to be developed and implemented. It can't be ignored because of cost.
No, I understand, I'm just saying if we prioritize it, that's what I have up to, you're looking at that whole list, you could add up that whole list, it's, I don't know, less than $1 billion, and the other one starts at 3.
And, NISDOT may be starting design work on this in the not too distant future. So there is still the possibility of some phasing with, this is sort of the all-in cost on the alternative range of alternatives that were presented in the Reimagine 787 planning study, but I think the design process might lead us to a segmenting of different implementation paths for different pieces of infrastructure, because I don't think we'll have the resources to do it all at once. And also because of the the condition of this stack, as we like to refer to it, the circular. Spaghetti by the river. There may be a more urgent need to move that along faster than maybe some of the other concepts. That's just me speaking, but obviously there's a long process ahead for that.
And then the uncertainty, since we didn't know the state budget was going to include us to continue seamlessly into the next phase, we push the process and it's way out into the future, which just inflates them ever more. If we can deliver parts sooner, the cost could come down, although I say that in this world of inflation that is ever evolving, so
Yeah.
who knows how much it'll cost at the end.
Yeah. Coming back to this, for the purposes of this, even though our current climate might say otherwise, we were estimating and projecting out using about a 2.5% rate of inflation over time. Now, I know sitting here today that you might say to yourself, is that reasonable? But, if we had that crystal ball for where things are going, we might say something else. I think there's some, if you look at the trend line over time, there are periods of time, maybe 4 to 8 years in history where inflation's higher and then inflation drops way down. So, but the trend line has kind of always stayed over the long haul, right around that 2 to 3% level. We didn't want to overestimate revenue because the plan needs to still be fiscally constrained. So by overestimating revenue, we didn't want to get in a position to say, yeah, we can fund that whole list and then some, and then find out that was not a reasonable estimate. So just FYI on that. Like I said, that section for task force members, will likely have the financial plan for your review in the next couple of weeks for sure. And then the final section is how we're measuring our success. So this comes back to those performance measures we were talking about earlier. So we have a series of federally required performance measures based on pavement and bridge condition, on safety, on system reliability for, congestion and for truck travel time, transit assets, and then transit safety. So these are some of the measures we're required to monitor as part of our plan. And then we'll be developing a handful of regional measures that we hope will be easily monitored over time with reliable data sources that don't change tremendously. And that might be of value for us to assess how the region is doing, and then that too is in development.
Sandy, I just.
Yeah.
One more thing for going next
Sure.
up, but I recently, just to go back to the other slides, I recently went out west for a trip, and I was telling Steve that, I know Mike, when he was here, Franchini talked about these autonomous vehicles and how they're coming. I didn't realize they were here. So
Yeah, they're here
when I
in
went
every
to
state like
Phoenix
this one.
and Las Vegas, they're there and I took one just to say I did it, and they're in the traffic and you can't avoid them, and I didn't realize, so when you put that on there about they're coming, they're just not here.
They're
There's
just
other
not here in New
areas.
York.
I actually had to research it. It was a little odd when we left the airport. We didn't know what it was. A car driving right next to us with no driver, and then another one passed us, and then you realize that this is just normal in Phoenix, and then in Las Vegas, they have the same thing, just a different company.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was very interesting, but this isn't one of those technologies that you're saying like when it comes, it's just when it comes
Right.
here, which is, I don't know how the CDTA views that, like I was just thinking, imagine if the
Yeah.
CDTA had a fleet of small cars that could pick you up at an area and drive you up and down the BRT, but yeah, it was pretty incredible.
And that's why I think the plan is consistent with the congestion management process, really focusing, I think, a lot of investment on safety and operations. The operational improvements, whether they're better signals, making sure your lane striping is in place, your signs are there, all of those things that will help make these vehicles work here in New York are where communities need to be going.
Stop snowing here.
Yeah.
There's snow. But for sure, that's why they're in the Phoenix
Yeah,
is, they don't have the weather we have, right? And that's one of many concerns. I still have not seen evidence that they work in New York City with the numbers of people and everything moving around, right? But they're coming, you know, we know Tesla's out there already, we know that there's, they have the technology even here to largely be, even though you still have a driver, but they're driving pretty much hands-free on the highways now. You have Tesla friends, so yeah, it's coming, and you know, we just have to be prepared as best we can to make those investments to ensure the safety and the reliability of the system. For all the users. So to close this, where we're going, so as I said, we are finishing that financial plan and the performance measure sections are in motion. Task force will have a chance to weigh in on those. We're gonna prepare a draft plan as best we can and present that to the policy board in June. Our original schedule called for us to have a solid draft plan that the policy board would then release for public review. I'm just sitting here today being honest, I'm not convinced we're gonna be ready. So we may have the policy board delegate back to the planning committee the formal authorization of the public review process. But we will do a phase 4 public participation process regardless, because we do have enough material to gather more input on the strategies and what people think about what we're saying. So we have some tabling events and largely that additional outreach would be between June and July 18th. With the goal of having the final draft plan for you folks for that August planning committee meeting. And if we have to delay the formal public participation step, that final push, our public participation requirements just require a 25-day public review. So we'll have the planning committee do that in the month of August for the final look at the plan, and then we'll adopt it in September. So that's sort of the backup plan because of all the delay in preparing the plan. But we are getting close. And I know our team is working very hard to polish up what they do have, complete these remaining sections, and continue to respond to the executive orders as we see them in massage language. And that's where we're at. So any questions about that? Thank you for indulging me in a long presentation on that.
Any questions for Sandy? It's a time horizon, I should know, it's a time horizon.
We're looking out to 2050, so
It's that's the federal requirement.
yeah, it's minimum of 20 years. And in practice, we all know these plans also have to be amended every 5 years or updated. So I fully expect, given where we're at with the infrastructure law, since that expires end of 2026, I fully expect to be amending this plan this time before our 5-year time frame is up. I will be surprised if I'm not amending this plan before the 5-year time frame is up. And I know that sounds cynical, but that's kind of where we're at with things.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Moving along. Capital Region Vision Zero, is that one? Discuss.
Yes, so we do have Alex Cohn. Alex, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay, great. Alex is from Cambridge Systematics. He's been leading our team, putting together the Capital Region Vision Zero Safety Action Plan. And he is going to give you, Carrie gave you a more robust update on the status of the plan at our prior planning committee meeting. So Alex is just going to review the implementation element, which would be new from what we talked about and shared at our last meeting. So Alex, can you see the slides? You're good?
I can. Thank you. Thanks,
Take it away.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be with you virtually today. Happy to show kind of where all of this broad process is, you know, kind of pointing towards directionally here. Next slide. So really we're talking about the safety implementation program, really kind of stealing an acronym from the tip, but what we want to do is to kind of with that hearken to the fact that looking at a broad set of projects that really advance the safe system approach and that are really cross-cutting across the 4 E's of safety, engineering projects, capital projects, projects addressing education and enforcement. Those that kind of come from the Governor's Traffic Safety Council family tree, as well as supporting emergency response and evaluation as well. So today, on the next slide, talk a bit about really the priority projects, really focusing on those E's. The draft tip does include $2 million reserved of HSIP funds kind of set aside for advancing this. And so what we wanted to do was to provide really a balanced program, as so much of our traditional process has focused on hotspot projects in particular. So we wanted to do is try to create a general, provide projects that really meet, promote a balance of focusing on hotspots, those with a demonstrated crash history, and then as well as focusing on systemic treatments that have increasingly become more to the fore as part of our practice throughout the state. And these are spots that take a more risk-based approach. These are spots that where there is the potential for crashes, that we see that they have the risk factors of similar locations region-wide. And we've conducted analyses of both. And they're really, like both the hotspot and the systemic process are really sort of the yin and the yang together of kind of where to look for candidates to improve safety and reduce risk throughout the whole network. And then also really across another axis of this is really looking at those, both focusing on the state and local system. It's been traditionally an issue to support, to have more local projects, using HSIP funds and kind of having dedicated safety projects. And, as we've seen through our analysis, there's, give or take some percentage points, really, an equal share of the crashes happening on both the state and local systems. So it's really, without, moving where we're going to cut the pie either way here, really just showing them as both equal sized partners. And then really kind of in the middle, so really sort of supporting that is really looking at some cross-cutting strategies as well, making sure that we're providing the funding and the resources to continue to build and support out this system. So in the next few slides, I'm going to provide just a little bit of what we've been doing throughout the planning process. First is sort of looking in these priority projects, is identifying those spots that have gone through street safety investigations. One thing that was really an absolute heads up play for this action plan process was to go out there and do 41 investigations for this project, rather than the roadway safety management process. Really, there's no way that we can just do the network analysis, screen locations, and then have any just simple, logic process to say, okay, plug and play this information, this treatment here. You really need to go out into the field, take a little bit more detailed look at the crashes, do a site investigation, and then come up with actual recommendations. And so out of the 41 that have been conducted so far, we're working with these project sponsors to really develop some of these recommendations for a little more specificity. But out of really the 41 locations that we see, we're really looking at about maybe four really specific projects that really have standalone capital improvements. They may involve some geometry changes, and that may be different than kind of going out there as part of bundled capital, bundled contracts. But what we've seen is that out of all these locations, there are improvements that can be made, should be made. Really, we've seen through, across all of these that we do see issues with the need to improve pedestrian crossings, signals or signage in those locations. Lighting is a large issue at a lot of locations, as well as not exactly safety related, but we think that we also have noticed and documented the opportunities to improve ADA ramps and access at those points as well. But for the four, hotspot locations, what we, wanted to do through these investigations is to identify if there are particular hotspot locations on the local system. This is similar to what NISAT does with their annual work program of investigations, formerly called the PILS list, the priority investigative locations. Now it's the annual work program. But really, this process was a great idea in the scope of work to include this investigative list themselves. Kind of thinking we'd be interesting to see as more NPOs continue to support this, whether 4 out of 40 locations comes up with a capital project, really has a major capital project recommended or not. But that's what we're seeing through here. So each of these sites will have a documented recommendation. We think that these are meriting, as part of further consideration for this bench of potential projects in the next, in the outer years of the TIP. Next slide, please. Also through this project, we have developing corridor concepts. So really identifying areas that have both safety and accessibility needs. So these are spots that were really identified first through some of our network analysis, but and also taking a look at those that see opportunity for improvements in accessibility, walkability, and then also align with some other community initiatives as well. So these sites really, by first taking a look through safety focus and doing the detailed safety investigations, we conducted road safety audits in each of those locations. So walking the corridors, or we have some areas here that are really whole blocks. To really look at those overall opportunities as well. So these are both safety and accessibility projects as well. So we think that these concepts may be delivered across multiple projects. There may be systemic improvements. There may be one or more corridor projects as well. We think this has been a great safety. Having safety as the genesis has really identified interesting locations and made sure that the needs of all road users was really centered in the whole discussion. Third, we've also reviewed the TIP illustrative list, and kind of adjacent to one of our corridor concepts, and it also has shown up in regards to, is aligned with the hotspot screening that we've done through the project, is that the City of Troy's Federal Street corridor improvements would have the potential to address some hotspot intersections at both ends of the project. And we think that some of that could be done as well as multiple projects as well. Yes, and I just wanted to note that while we're not necessarily planning on listing any state projects just as of yet, particularly since the work program is not quite set up for Region 1 just yet. On the other side of the coin, the systemic project. So how do we, this is something that's been increasingly developing throughout the state through a range of our systemic safety plans, our pedestrian safety action plan in 2018, our first one, followed by our vulnerable road user safety assessment, roadway departure, and lastly, the roadway departure safety action plan right now, which is the funding opportunity available. We've also developed an overall set of treatment packages, really bringing all of these together, as well as with FHWA proven safety countermeasures. So we're trying to create not just a sort of a menu of different package options that are based on the type of focus, crash type you're looking at. So whether we're looking at pedestrians, whether we're looking at intersections, whether we're looking at roadway departures or speed management, we can address those issues, take a look at the focus facilities that we've seen to be priorities, identify some other eligibility issues, and then, really sort of delivery methods as well too. So whether it's signage and paint, or whether it's a signal project, or whether there's some degree of construction involved, so that really this helps inform some of the potential choices and options that can be done as well. Obviously, I'm just kind of noting some of these the sheer number of locations here as well. There will be some field investigation necessary, but we wanted to really help narrow this down. And so first here, what we see with the systemic intersections is that that of two of the focus crash groups, both intersections and pedestrians, these issues are really located obviously at the intersection geography. And so this is where, and then the focus facilities were those locations where we saw that there was really kind of the highest share of fatal and severe injury crashes happening throughout the network. And lastly, we kind of note for pedestrians that really about, I think about 2/3 or more of pedestrian crashes, fatal and severe injury crashes, are happening at intersections as opposed to along segments and corridors. So it's really, the intent was to focus on pedestrians at these locations. To the right here, we see some of the, back one slide, please. We see the owner types. So really predominantly, these intersections are really these highest numbers of owners are NYSDOT or cities or villages. Then further to the right, we have the total number of focus facilities, and then we've try to narrow that down to those with an above average number of risk factors. And in our systemic analysis, we've identified risk factors that show up, roadway attributes or roadway operational characteristics, traffic, pedestrian activity that has, whether those are more representative of the crashes that are happening. So really, as we see that in these locations that we see that there are, think that those with above average number of risk factors are those that, can really take a look and focus on more than others. And then kind of at the bottom there too, is that urban signalized intersections with their cross intersections or have more than 4 legs. These are locations that have, that both show, so for NYSDOT, there's 139, for all the cities and villages kind of combined, 125. There's, those locations have above average number of risk factors for both crash types. So those, focus number of locations make sense to really be potentially prioritized, since there's the opportunity to have complementary treatment packages to have a cumulative reduction of crash potential. And also what I wanted to highlight here as well is those that are in vulnerable road user high risk areas. This is a special area shown in the NYSDOT Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment. And so that these locations as well are targeted for additional funding, not additional funding, but that New York State DOT, as part of the Highway Safety Improvement Program, does have to try to, per rule, have to spend 15% of their funding for vulnerable road user safety projects. So there is an emphasis to particularly support projects in high risk areas. So we wanted to take the opportunity to note these locations as well. And these are located within census tracts in Albany, Schenectady, and Troy. Fine. Similarly here, for segments, and the focus crash types, focus crash groups, for these are both roadway departures and speed related. These are worth showing together as well, kind of under the both, because over 40% of our fatal and severe injury roadway departure crashes in this region have speed as the primary contributing factor. So where there's an opportunity to address speed, that will also reduce the risk of roadway departures. And really one of our major primary areas is on rural arterials is our #1 focus facility. And those are really all pretty much NISDOT owned. But as we look at, where can more of our local sponsors, participate, really our county and town facilities do show up here as well. So there's really a number of priority county facilities and some town facilities as well that could be of, really be good candidates for these improvements. Oh yes, and one that's hanging over is really only for speeding only or urban major collectors as well. So these would be opportunities for traffic calming measures as well. Lastly, I'm happy to take any questions after. What we really wanted to do is also identify just a few cross-cutting projects. Thinking that this is a good opportunity to make sure that there is room in, Highway Safety Improvement Program funds to continue to sustain the portfolio and to sustain the, candidate list of projects. Kind of make sure that the spinning wheel of the overall 6 steps of the roadway safety management process continue. That's one to continue to support safety investigations, doing roadway safety audits at continual locations as well. Supporting data collection, particularly those for vulnerable road users. And we've also had a lot of interest in emergency response outcomes as well. So it's, the opportunity to look at that maybe with HSIF funds, but also to other ones as well. To also enhance really the outcomes that we see in the crash data as well. So really kind of where this implementation program is coming next, we are putting this into the draft Vision Zero Safety Action Plan. We will have these locations mapped, and we can also provide detailed lists of these locations, particularly the systemic ones, each of facility owners as well.
Any questions? Help us spend our HSIP money?
I hope so.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, the point Alex made about the roadway departures, just as a reminder, we do have the roadway departure call for projects happening. And I think the deadline is early June. But certainly counties, I highly encourage counties, and maybe even in partnership with your local governments within your county to pursue grant applications for those funds. If you would like more information, you can reach out to Carrie. And Carrie, did you have a additional point?
I just wanted to say that you had sent out the map of how the risk factors that NISA had put together, struck out for all of our roadways, and then so NISA had put up their kind of their hotspot map and list and then the GIS layer, but they didn't have their risk factors shown in that. So we, Parker and I in our office put that together, so that is available for you to check as well. So you can look at the hotspot stuff with the risk factor on it, and then help prioritize patients you might want to.
Are they on the same website?
On ours, yeah, NISE isn't, but on ours.
Yeah, we can resend those links to the group just so you guys have the latest and greatest info.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Moving along. tip admin modifications.
Yeah, this is just a quick, sort of update,
FYI.
yeah, a little bit of an FYI. There it is. Anything of significance here, guys, that you want to point out?
No, just a summary of the administrative modifications, the ones that didn't meet the criteria to be brought to planning committee. We did 4 since the last meeting.
Nothing there. ISTAT project delivery. Right,
Yeah, we had two lettings locally recently. We let the recurring overhead sign replacement project, which of course saw bids higher than our estimate. The bids were in a week of very, I guess I'd say the news cycle was all sorts of uncertainty, so bids reflected that.
Mm.
And then the 787 bridges that were the preservation project that originally received no bid, so we spun the project off. That went to bid. Again, that came in about 35% over our estimate, hence the tip letter earlier to adjust the other project we're putting out to bid. And currently, we don't have any other lettings scheduled until at least June right now, so next meeting will update on those.
Greg. All right, status of regional transportation planning initiatives.
Yeah, so this is just the review of our status of the linkage studies and other things. I did want to point out, we are doing the final review of the Voorheesville Safe Streets Policy and Plan, or the Complete Streets Plan. We're also doing a final review of the Broadway Flood Resilient Study. The Castleton Complete Street Study has been completed and the village has already adopted this plan. So good for them. Central Avenue West Quarter Study, we had the final public meeting recently and they're currently developing the final plan, which I hope to have at a future presentation for you folks at a future meeting. The Milton Town Center plan we talked about at our last meeting, that one has been completed. We have selected the consultant to work on the Half Moon Clifton Park Sargent County study, County Route 109. So that is just getting started. The Route 7 project in Niskuna, I believe has had a kickoff meeting and is just getting underway. And we are going to be reaching out to the sponsors for our new projects in Boston Spa and in Saratoga in the next few weeks with our memorandum of understanding, and hopefully we can get started on those in June. We have a number of technical assistance projects that Andrew and others on our staff are working to finish up. So now that we're completed with the tip, we may have more capacity to take on new ones over the summer and into the fall for sure. So keep that program in mind. But our big push over the summer, certainly the next few weeks, few months, I should say, is finishing our long range plan. But there are other initiatives still going on. We're doing some follow-up work on the 378 bridge study for some modeling. We're about to initiate a new 88 transition plan for Albany County while completing some of the projects that we funded last year. Did a final report ever happen for 787, or are you folks still working on the absolute final report?
It needs to be reviewed by Federal Highway one last time, which should happen. They have 30 days to review it. The final should be in their hands this week. So by June, I'll have a final. No, and we're kicking off the next phases
Great.
very quickly.
The Vision Zero Safety Action Plan we just talked about is on a similar timeline as our long range plan, so we'll have a briefing for the policy board in June. And hopefully we'll be releasing a draft plan for public review for June and July to then bring to you folks in August for recommending policy board approval in September. So it's more or less on the same timeline as our long range plan. And we are also still coordinating with the folks in Schenectady County on the third PEL study, the I-890 exit 4C. planning study. So we have a lot that's going on, but also a lot that's wrapping up, which is the good news story. Because that will afford our staff some time to get back to some of our core work. And also be able to help you folks in local government, and regional partners. To build tools and resources that you folks can use in your grant applications, so that we're making sure all of this stuff we talk about at a concept planning level leads to projects and actually gets things over the finish line. So that'll be our goals over the next couple of months, and the year. That's just a quick update.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Regional and local planning updates, back to you, Sandy.
You know, again, we'll send out a follow-up on the roadway departure information, a call for projects. And again, that technical assistance program remains open if there's interest for any small scale help. And I'll just also mention, as we're getting into the warmer months, if anybody does need any assistance with traffic counts, whether that be vehicles, intersection counts, trail counts, pedestrian counts, we do have free resources available to you. Just reach out to us and we can get those counts scheduled. Stop there.
CDRPC is Mark on?
Is Mark still with us? Mark is no longer with us.
So nothing from CDRPC, CDTA.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Mike Williams. Sorry I couldn't be in person today. But for updates for this meeting, this month we'll be welcoming our new CEO, Frank Anacaro, who starts this coming Monday. Of course, starting a meet and greet with staff and orient them on all the various projects we're working on. So we're looking forward to that. After several delays, due in part to the leadership transition at CDTA, we're back on track to complete the transit development plan update and update it at our board meeting at the end of next month. So we'll be reaching out to various partners, including lots of folks here in the coming weeks, to go over the finalized plan. And that includes integration with InMotion 2050. So Ethan and I will be in touch with Sandy soon, and I'm confident we'll be able to work it in before adoption. The only other stuff to go over is a couple of service changes. At the end of this month, we'll be making our seasonal adjustments, reducing service on school routes that aren't used over the summer, and adding service such as our nature bus and trolley services. We're also going to be making some adjustments to our Flex micro transit service in Colony and Southern Saratoga County to reduce wait times and improve efficiency. Lastly, towards the end of the summer, we're planning to establish a link from this region to the Glens Falls region with a commuter route connecting downtown Glens Falls to downtown Saratoga Springs on weekdays. And further changes up in Glens Falls are planned for either late 2025 or early 26. But those mostly concern routes that operate outside of this MPO. So if anyone's interested on that, I'd be happy to chat about that offline.
All right, I'll start with sort of the reason we brought our tip amendment in late for Riverview to, or scope and high cost change. STIP ballots, so just like here, we have the tiers of STIP changes that can be just an administrative modification to planning committee approval to policy. Federal Highway also has a tiered approval layer, and due to their evolving priorities, we are trying to get ahead of large STIP ballots that actually need Federal Highway to approve them. So that's why we brought the Nelson Riverview merger forward. We're also looking at local projects that are on the books and making sure that all the phases are on the STIP. It doesn't matter what year, just as long as they're on the STIP. And so our own staff is just doing a quick double check that everything is on the STIP. And if they're not, then we might reach out to get a phase added, because a new phase, regardless of how much money, also goes to Federal Highway. So it's just a little drill to get ahead of STIP approvals with Federal Highway. Just again, with things changing, STIP approvals may slow down at some point. So we're just trying to stay ahead of the curve there. So I think we're good in the initial review of what's out there, but I think we're good. In better news, we're also working on hiring. We can't announce anything yet, as we're trying to hire a third liaison for local projects. You currently work with either Alex or Lorenzo Cuneo. We're looking to hire a third person to provide relief because the volume of local projects continues to be large. So when we have an official person, we'll announce it at the next meeting. And then upcoming planning, speaking of locals, May 15th, next week on Thursday. We're hosting a session in the morning to go over hot topics on local projects, a refresher. You know, just a review and an update. Of course, there'll be Q&A for any curiosities. So all local sponsors are invited, all the respective consultants that work for them are invited. We got
What's that?
Thursday, May 15th, next week. We anticipate like 2-3 hours, just a quick overview of issues encountered in recent years, and we want to get this on the calendar every spring again to just a refresher for hot topics. This is the goal. And then lastly, if in the New York State Association of Transportation Engineers is holding their conference at the end of May in Saratoga for May 20th through 30th. As much as it's New York State Transportation Engineers, it's really evolved to all transportation professionals. This year, we're offering, besides engineered PDH credits, there's landscape architect credits, surveyor credits, and I think for the first time, planning credits. So some of the sessions, you can get an AICP, so. Registration's still open, so anyone that cares to go to Saratoga to interact, network, and get some respective continuing ed educate credits, we encourage you to check it out. And that's it.
Yeah. So Greg, for the meeting minutes, would it be accurate to assume that you need 2 people to replace the one Lorenzo Stefano that's in order?
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure for the minutes,
Yeah.
when I review them, that was correctly stated.
Yeah.
How much was that?
Greg, did we wanna mention the slim possibility about another planning committee?
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah.
if, sorry about that, yes,
That's okay.
thank you, so this getting ahead of the STIP ballots. We're targeting like mid-June to have all our STIP ballots done that we anticipate for this year. If a large project is found or an issue is found that needs planning committee action, we may be tentatively scheduling a planning committee in 2 weeks. A very short agenda to just clear a couple of tip amendments if needed. We gotta see how some things play out. I have one that's awaiting a final budget. And if we identify any others, it may be a very brief impromptu planning committee to get them through policy in June.
So we would tentatively, just so you have it for your calendars, it would be May 21st at 9:30 AM. I would expect it to be half hour. At most, we won't have any other agenda. We can still do the hybrid meeting. You're welcome to come here, but many of you may choose to.
Quorum be had online.
Yeah, we can do, because we're hybrid meetings, but yeah, so long as we have quorum and we can act, that's.
That's the key. Yeah, we need quorum if this is needed. I hope to know. I hope to know by the end of this week if we need that. And, maybe we put it on the calendar and then cancel it if not needed is
Right.
way to.
Some of the, I'll speak for Craig, some of the uncertainty is tied to the status of the state budget, so.
All right, thank you, Greg. Thruway Authority, is anybody with us?
Yeah. I can give you an update on the Castleton Bridge.
Yeah.
We are currently have eastbound closed. It is down to one lane each direction on the westbound. We are doing full deck repair and steel repairs. And with an anticipated finish in fall, late fall. So, and one other, we are installing gantry units at exit 25 and 25A.
What do you install?
For Easy Pass.
Okay.
The big gantry units, if you travel on the throughway, you see the big gantry units you go under, that's all our Easy Pass technology. We are installing those at the ramps of 25 and 25A.
Is there a particular reason the install there? I'm just curious.
No, we have them on mainline also, but we have found that it's better if we have them at the ramps. So,
Slower speeds.
yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
all right, thank you. Albany County Airport Authority.
I don't believe we have a representative today.
Do they have any representative?
They do. Apologize, this was, he literally came day 3 of his work tenure last meeting. David Monteverdi.
Albany Port.
Hello, everyone. We are finishing up on the work, the signalization on Corning Hill and River Road. Hopefully, by the end of the summer, that'll be done. That again had to do with the Beacon Island project. We actually have an RFEI out for Beacon Island. So that's the 85 acres that was intended to be the offshore wind tower manufacturing facility. Due to the current climate in the offshore wind space and industry, the port felt it was appropriate to kind of test the market to see if there's any other potential utilization for the 85 acres. Considering it's pretty much pad ready. We recently received about 19 million in Fast New York funding to complete the installation of the substation and the other utilities on the site. So once that work is done, which is anticipated to finish end of 26 to 27, we will be pretty much fully going to get more pad ready. We've energized the site to be ready to go. So we're trying to identify what the end user of that site will be to get buildings, up and running by the time that we get the site electrified. So if you know anyone looking for 85 acres or parcels, just let us know. We are working with our partners at the city of Rensselaer to identify a user for the 42 acres, which is the old BASF site. Still gaming business development conversations there. And the port is working with Kate over at CDRPC and ESD as well as CEG on a manufacturing foreign trade esque event for World Trade Month. The city hosts a World Trade Week NYC every May. We partnered with them and we're looking to try to get the capital region involved in some of the World Trade conversation that happens mainly in the city. So we're trying to get that up here. So we'll looking towards the end of May for that event. It might end up going into June. But we'll send out any information along once we get that situated.
All right, thank you. Local government. Anybody? Anything interesting besides your autonomous vehicle?
I got one question, and Sandy, I apologize if I asked this 6 years ago, because I feel like I did. But we have airport, we have throughway, we have port, we have buses. Why don't we have rail?
Try specifically Amtrak.
Amtrak, CSX, CP Rail, the other transportation groups that are in there. I'm working with them a lot. They give you a lot of attitude. I've talked to the DOT. They give the DOT a lot of attitude, but they're not in the room. And we're the transportation group, and transportation, they have people, they have goods.
Yep.
They have lines. We're investing, $1 billion into a bridge that we don't own across the Hudson so that they can make sure that they're happy.
Yeah.
So, but are they exempt from this?
They're private. So therefore they can't be on our boards. However, they participate through our freight advisory committee. And I know Ethan's gonna be working since Chris left to kind of rebuild those relationships. That would be the ideal scenario to have them engage with us there. But to your point, they, because they're private, they only participate to the extent it benefits them, right? So Amtrak's
Amtrak private?
So Amtrak's in a little different category. We do have a local liaison. I know you folks in Rensselaer have a good relationship with Amtrak. They provide us, when I've spoken with them, their bigger concerns are not so much the rail side. They talk to me about first and last mile access to the stations. So that's their more pride, and I think that's kind of what you experience in Rensselaer's out there. I think the place for them to be engaged is through the freight advisory committee. Amtrak's, maybe not the freight advisory committee, there might be another place, but we do have a relationship with their liaison.
And the Federal Rail Administration money, which is the federal fund source they get, is not required to come through the MPO
That's the
approval
other
process by
one, yes.
statute, so they just do it.
You have a rail division, correct?
We do, we have a group that deals in the FRA world and helps be the conduit, but that money basically just goes straight to the rail. We're informed.
But, yeah, going back to the long range plan work in that very detailed table you could read today, we are tracking a couple of Amtrak projects because the state of Vermont and the state of Mass are both pursuing planning studies to expand the rail from basically Albany Rensselaer out to the high-speed rail being planned in Massachusetts, and then also Vermont is planning a new Green Mountain route. But both of the origin stories for the route would be at Albany Rensselaer. So we're tracking that to the extent we can when we get information from the main office. They're in a very, very early stages of that planning work. So, yeah, it's not to say that they're not involved here, but in terms of a planning committee policy board role, yeah, they don't have to sit at the table.
Any high-speed rail discussion for New York?
So, I saw something recently that came up again, and I don't know, maybe we need to put back out there that the high-speed rail study was completed a few years ago. And there were some proposals in there, particularly from Schenectady West. Where the bulk of the proposed improvements are, to be honest, because most of it was outside of the capital region. I haven't focused on the details of where all of that lands. But there definitely was a look to get the speeds up between Schenectady and Buffalo. Yeah,
Like more than zero when they're waiting for another train.
100%, yeah. And I know it's been in the news, obviously, there's work going on in the tunnels down in New York City. That's impacted the Empire Line, so, they've added cars but reduced the number of trains, so there's a little bit of a challenge, but we do know that those trains are packed. I mean, we've been on them, they're packed all the time, so we're very fortunate to have a very strong Amtrak system in our region.
Answer your question.
Was it a satisfactory answer?
It's the railroad.
Just the.
Well,
It's not an easy
I'll
thing.
just say this, one of the challenges that we have with,
Meeting,
I'm sorry,
the 378
And
that morning.
are we having a conversation?
Sorry,
there was a sidebar, sorry.
Sorry.
does it conflict with 9:30?
Yeah.
Of course it does. Okay, we can move that. Sorry, there's a Pell meeting that conflicts with the planning committee meeting that we just discussed on the 21st.
Oh, wasn't on my calendar, okay.
Yeah.
Just got sent yesterday.
Anyway,
Susan.
we'll work together, figure that out.
Okay.
Back with Sam.
Oh, what I was just gonna say though, lessons learned in privatizing infrastructure, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Upcoming meetings, events, please take note. Trade advisory, May 21. It's the same day as our potential planning committee meeting. Regional op, May 29.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, the freight advisory committee is being rescheduled.
Oh, all right. And policy board, June 5. And other than that, ask for a motion to adjourn, if I can get that.
John?
Make the motion.
John and Mike.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, thank you for
Thanks.
coming today.